Chapter 3. Smoke Beneath the Canopy. The hut they led him into was low-roofed and warm despite the damp air outside. Smoke from a central fire pit gathered in a hazy layer near the ceiling, before slipping out through a narrow opening cut into the thatch. The interior smelled of peat, animal hide, and dried herbs hung in careful bundles from wooden beams. Light filtered through the doorway in a thin gray strip that stretched across the earthen floor. He paused just inside the threshold, allowing his eyes to adjust, aware of the figures gathering outside, but unable to understand the words exchanged in rising tension. The woman who had first touched his wound motioned for him to sit near the fire. He lowered himself carefully onto a woven mat, every movement measured. Now that stillness surrounded him. The weight of what his body had endured began to press more insistently. His shoulder throbbed in slow pulses, and when he pressed his palm against his ribs, he felt tenderness along the bone. Yet the weakness remained distant, as though held back by something working beneath his skin. He did not question it. He could not. The woman knelt before him and examined his injuries more closely. She cleaned the dried blood from his temple with a cloth dipped in warm water. Her touch was steady, clinical, without reverence or fear. When she finished, she leaned back and studied his face with quiet intensity. He met her gaze, searching for recognition there, and finding none. Whatever he was to them, it was not yet defined. Outside the hut, voices grew louder. The tall warrior's tone carried authority edged with urgency. Other voices answered, some sharp with disagreement. The stranger could not decipher the language, but emotion required no translation. The sound of metal striking wood briefly cut through the argument. A blade tested against a shield rim, perhaps, or simply an impatient gesture. The woman rose and stepped toward the doorway, listening without leaving his side entirely. He shifted slightly, peering through the narrow opening. The valley lay under a dimming sky, clouds thinning as the storm passed eastward. Smoke from cooking fires drifted lazily upward, but beneath it tension coiled through the settlement. Warriors moved with purpose now, adjusting straps, checking spearheads, speaking in tight clusters. The older man stood near the center of the gathering, hands clasped behind his back, listening more than speaking. Beyond the ridgeline to the south, the forest held a different stillness. It was not the quiet of wildlife resuming its rhythm, but the pause before intrusion. He sensed it as surely as if he had seen it. The men who hunted him were disciplined. They would not abandon pursuit easily. A horn call broke the air again, clearer now than before. It did not echo aimlessly. It was answered, faintly but distinctly, from another direction. The sound carried through the trees in measured intervals. The argument outside shifted immediately. Several warriors rushed toward the southern ridge, spears in hand. Others began ushering livestock toward crude enclosures shielded by thicker brush. Children were led into huts. The settlement's rhythm transformed from daily life into preparation. The woman returned inside and knelt before him once more. She spoke a series of words slowly, enunciating carefully as though testing whether he might understand. He watched her mouth form the shapes, listening to tone and cadence. None of it resolved into meaning. He shook his head once. She frowned faintly, then pressed her hand against her own chest and spoke a single word. It was clearly a name. She repeated it, firmer this time. Then she gestured toward him expectantly. He hesitated. There was nothing to offer. No sound rose from memory when he reached for one. Only emptiness. He lowered his gaze. She seemed to understand something in that gesture. Instead of pressing him further, She simply nodded once and stood. Outside, the tall warrior entered abruptly. He did not kneel this time. His voice was quick and sharp as he addressed the woman. She answered without backing down. Their exchange was tense but brief. At last he turned toward the stranger and studied him again, this time with clearer calculation. Whatever debate had divided the tribe moments earlier was narrowing toward necessity. The tall warrior jerked his chin toward the doorway. The stranger rose. They moved together toward the southern edge of the valley, climbing a narrow path half concealed by brush. The air grew cooler as they ascended. At the ridgeline, the forest stretched out in layered green and shadow. Movement flickered below. The armored men advanced through the trees in a broad line, shields held ready, blades visible at their sides. Their formation was looser now than before, adapted to woodland terrain, yet still unmistakably organized. Sunlight caught along the curve of their helmets and the rigid plates protecting their torsos. They did not move like hunters. They moved like a machine. The tribe's warriors crouched along the ridge, hidden behind brush and stone. Bows were drawn, but not yet released. Spears rested lightly against shoulders. Breath slowed. The stranger felt the tension ripple outward from them in waves. The horn sounded again, closer still. One of the armored men raised his hand, signaling a halt. The formation stopped as one. A brief exchange followed among them. Then two figures broke from the line and moved ahead cautiously, scanning the undergrowth. The tall warrior beside the stranger muttered something under his breath. His grip tightened around his spear shaft. The stranger watched the advancing figures with sharpened awareness. Something in the way they moved, measured, synchronized, stirred a flicker at the edge of memory. He saw flashes not of forest, but of corridors, of structured movement under artificial light. The images vanished before they formed fully. One of the advancing armored men paused and crouched, examining the forest floor. His hand brushed aside leaves. He rose and pointed toward the ridge. They had found sign. A command rang out sharply, shields lifted in unison. The first arrow left the ridge a heartbeat later. It struck wood, splintering against a raised shield. The forest erupted into motion. More arrows followed, dark streaks slicing through air. Some found gaps between shield edges. A cry rose from below as one armored man fell to his knees. The disciplined line did not break. Shields locked tighter. Another command cut through the chaos, and the formation surged forward, climbing the slope with relentless coordination. The tribe's warriors loosed arrows until the enemy closed distance too quickly. Then spears were raised. The tall warrior shouted a word that needed no translation. They charged. The stranger did not remember deciding to move, but he did. He followed the surge down the slope, feet finding purchase among loose stones and roots. The clash came in a violent collision of wood, iron, and bone. Spears struck shields with heavy thuds. Blades flashed in narrow arcs. The forest filled with shouts and the sharp ring of metal striking metal. An armored figure lunged toward him, blade cutting through air with lethal precision. Instinct overtook thought. He stepped aside with unnatural speed and drove his forearm into the attacker's throat. The impact was solid, controlled. The man staggered backward. The stranger seized the edge of the shield and wrenched it sideways, unbalancing him completely before delivering a blow to the jaw that dropped him into the leaf litter. Shock rippled through the nearby tribesmen who witnessed it. Another armored soldier advanced, shield thrust forward. The stranger ducked beneath the rim and drove his shoulder into the man's midsection. Pain flared through his already injured ribs, but he forced through it, toppling the soldier backward down the slope. The battle was brief but brutal. The armored men did not fight wildly. They fought to break resistance quickly. Yet the terrain favored the tribe. Roots and uneven ground disrupted formation. Arrows continued to fall from above. After several moments of fierce struggle, a sharp command rang out, and the armored line withdrew in controlled retreat, dragging wounded with them. Silence returned slowly, broken only by labored breathing and the low groans of the injured. The stranger stood among them, chest rising steadily. Dark blood, his and others, streaked his forearms. He looked down at his hands as though seeing them for the first time. The tall warrior approached, breathing hard. He stared at the stranger with something new in his eyes. Not suspicion, not entirely trust, but recognition of capability. Around them, the tribe began tending to their wounded. From the forest below, the armored men disappeared into shadow. They would return. And now the tribe knew that whatever had fallen from the sky could fight. There is always a story to be told out here in the frontier, as long as there is someone to listen, like, and subscribe, and join us again for more.